Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harping on Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. Now, I'm very grateful for my two contributors for joining me today. Both are huge Leinster fans like myself, so they'd have been forgiven for telling me at the last minute they were washing their hair or something like that. But our first guest this week is coming to us from the great Rock of Gibraltar, earning Harping cap number 45. Welcome back to Mr. Rich Mifsud.
Evening, Jeff. Evening, Hugo, and may the fourth be with you.
Ah, indeed.
On a real series of sci-fi.
And also here is someone coming to us from London for his eighth appearance. Hello once again to Mr. Hugo Gordon.
Thanks very much for having me back, Jeff. Hi, Rich.
Great to see you both. Okay, look, let's crack on with that feature match of the week, which was, of course, Leinster v Northampton in the semifinals of the Investec Champions Cup. It was played at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday, May the 3rd. Now, normally we do these wrap pods by first going through the timeline. We were doing that, for one thing to be a little bit different to other pods, but also to get a sense of what the match was like at different points from start to finish. But being a Leinster-based pod that we are, I'm not so sure that that's the way to go for this particular match. So what we've done instead is we've selected a series of topics from Saturday evening, so we can harp on one or two in depth and then maybe quickly go through the others and cover the match that way. Now, we're going to start with yourself, Rich. Obviously, this was a deeply disappointing day for all Leinster fans, particularly given how the past few European campaigns have gone. And you've chosen a topic to lead off with that is definitely relevant across all those narrow defeats in recent years. You worded the title this way: the importance of sports psychology and the top 2 inches. Off you go, sir.
Yeah, and it's one of those that people don't seem to, at least whenever you read any commentary on any game, people don't seem to touch upon that subject, and it's incredibly important in my very honest opinion. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, not a mental health professional by any stretch of the imagination. But I do know human beings, and and human beings have feelings, and much in the same way as you gain confidence from a good play, an uplifting win, what have you, the reverse is very much also true. And actually, for the first time ever in his post-match press conference, Leo Cullen actually alluded to the fact he was asked about whether what happened on Saturday was as a result of complacency, and he said there was no complacency there whatsoever. They knew exactly what Northampton were going to bring. They were concerned as to what Northampton were going to bring to the party, which was pretty evident, and we all saw what it was, and it was a brand of very scintillating rugby. But what he did say, and he reiterated this point on a number of occasions, is that when we fell behind in the scoreboard, then we became jittery. And it wasn't a jitteriness because we couldn't narrow the gap and indeed go beyond the gap, because we've done that on numerous occasions in regular season games. That's, being 10, 15 points behind for Leinster isn't an issue in a normal game, if I can describe it as such. We can score very quickly. We can score and be very ruthless, very clinical, very quickly. And these, what to other teams may be high mountains to climb, we catch up pretty quickly, or we have the ability to do that. But it seems that we are unable to do that in these knockout games. And what Leo was referring to was that this desperation that the players have not to fail, and it's this fear of failure that led to the eventual outcome of the game. And that I think has been the case certainly in those very huge games that we've had, the 3 finals that we've lost on the trot, and the 2019 final, which we also lost. Sadly, I was there for 3 out of those 4 in person, and it was palpable. Even and I suppose the most gutting one. And yesterday I had the exact same feeling. I felt the exact same, and funnily enough, we were marginally or temporarily only in the lead in yesterday's game, but never in control. I felt as bad yesterday as I did when La Rochelle beat us at the Aviva. That's how bad I felt yesterday. And they are two very different games. In the Aviva, in the La Rochelle game, we soared up towards a huge advantage in the scoreboard, and then it became very palpable that people were getting scared, as in the players were getting scared. People started making mistakes that led eventually to La Rochelle winning. It was pretty much the same as what happened in Marseille, pretty much the same as what happened against Saracens in Newcastle, and perhaps not so much last year against Toulouse, but it's one of these things that raises the issue of, are we a team of bottlers, chokers, whatever you want to call us, or refer to the team as? And I think that the facts seem to support that suggestion. There is a definite monkey on the players' shoulders when it comes to that inability to get over the line in these knockout games. Don't ask me why. I'm sure that they have access to sports psychologists at Leinster, but it's just this fear. Whereas if you contrast that to, and I'll tell you when I thought that we were going to lose, and that was as soon as I saw the body language of the Northampton Saints coaching staff and players at the outset of the match. They were relaxed, completely relaxed. You contrast that with how our coaching staff were and our players were, and they were extremely uptight, very nervous, very tense, and you think, whoa. I mean, the fact of the matter is that Northampton had the perfect match to be relaxed about. Nobody gave them a chance, or nobody with, and I find that completely disrespectful to Northampton, frankly. But if you're going to go by statistics and statistics alone, they are a team that's languishing in the 7th position in the Premiership, coming up against Ireland plus All Blacks plus Springboks plus ex-France international, and all the bookies and the pundits are writing them off completely. Well, that is the perfect motivational speech for Saints. The fact that they managed to execute an incredibly good game plan very, very well, and tore our defense to ribbons particularly in that first half, is just to their credit. But I thought they were in the absolutely right mental space, whereas we weren't. We certainly weren't. And the top 2 inches, as is colloquially termed, is incredibly important. And if you're not there right mentally for a game, you can be the best team on paper in the world, but you're going to come unstuck if the team opposite you, who are of a similar level, especially in a semi-final of a Champions Cup, where the differences in quality are so minimal. That ability to be able to win is perhaps even magnified even further.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we've been talking about since literally before the season began. I mean, it all comes down to the way the last few seasons have gone for Leinster, fallen short in both competitions. And what we said on a pod, I think, before the season even kicked off was that really no result, no performance for Leinster will really matter until we get to May. It was like, and I think someone on the pod said we could literally win every game up to May and nothing will be done yet. It's about how we prepare for that on the day. And, that's a lot of pressure to carry through the season for anybody. Exactly. But it is true. It is those are the expectation levels at Leinster. I think my take on that is that it was definitely, you can imagine it being present in the team. You could see it, I suppose, at times in the team. And I think I'm afraid to say one name in particular because I'm suggesting it's all on him. But I think Sam Prendergast's performance, it's not that it was all his fault. It's not that but I think that he would, because he's new, this is his first time going through all this, he'd be relying on the people around him, and that tension, if that tension is there throughout the squad from the pressure over the years, that could reflect in him. And we saw that, there was misconversions, and there was a missed tackle. I think he does need to bulk himself up maybe for next season as well. He's got to work on some aspects of his game. But I think that the pressure that we were feeling as Leinster, at just to succeed. We're talking about getting a fifth star, just getting a trophy at all. Even if we had one, if we nicked the win at the end, the pressure would still be there, and it would be doubly so going into a final in a few weeks with playoffs to come after that. And there's that the pressure is still going to be felt. So it's about how we manage it, and we're just going to see how that goes. What do you make of it, Hugo?
Yeah, I mean, hard to disagree with anything that you both have said. I think Richard's articulated one of the core issues really well here. This is not to do down Northampton, who we'll talk about it in a moment. I thought were really, really, really good yesterday. I thought they were absolutely brilliant, and they fully deserved their win. But as Richard said, you look at those two squads on paper, you look at the number of internationals you have, you look at the experience they have, you look at the kind of the prestige attached to individual collections of names, and that was a game that Leinster were deservedly favourites for. Some of the pre-match talk, as always with these things, frustrating. In some of the kind of views that were put out, Bernard Jackman, for example, saying that Northampton had no chance of winning. I know it's partly kind of media headline stuff, but it is always very frustrating and very disrespectful. But there is so clearly, as Richard said, just a monkey on our backs that is weighing us down, that we are really struggling to deal with at the moment. What I was reminded of, after the final whistle went yesterday, was Rory McIlroy, up until he finally got it done recently to win the career Grand Slam, and hopefully that is a positive omen for Leinster in the future. But you could just see him in the pressure he was under in some of these majors, the pressure he was under going into those kind of final holes in the recent Masters. How much people can get inside their own heads, how much incredibly talented individuals, if their heads are signed in the right place, it can all go to pieces. And Leinster's heads not being in the right place is in some ways, despite the fact that Northampton did play very well and forced us into many mistakes, but Leinster's heads not being in the right place is in many ways kind of one of the only explanations for how the last few years have gone. With the possible exception of the final last year against Toulouse, where Toulouse, I think, were deservedly favourites. And in a weird way, actually, we probably played better in that game than I thought we would going into it, and actually arguably came closer to winning that one than we had any of the previous ones.
Yeah.
There is something about the pressure of expectation on this team, the pressure of a Champions Cup. I agree, Richard. The idea the Champions Cup is kind of the only thing that matters, and all the focus being on there, and all the pressure being there. But how else can you explain a team that has had comfortably the best defense in Europe all season, conceding so many tries in the first half, conceding 3 tries in 10 minutes in the first half? How else do you explain? I mean, it was the highest points we conceded in Europe. I went back years worth of tournaments earlier, and I hadn't reached the last point where we conceded that many points. I can only assume it was kind of the mid 2010s at the very earliest. It was the last time we conceded this many points. In most games, if you score 34 points, you're going to win. Most games, if you score 34 points with the defense that we have had this season, we win comfortably. And yet we went to pieces. And the ease with which Northampton scored all but one of their tries from deep. The ease with which, when they found space, they were able to convert that. The mistakes that we made, Henry Pollock's try, again, we'll get to Pollock in a moment, and he was unreal. But the defending for that try, we found 6 of our players on the wrong side of a ruck. And when Pollock broke through, despite the fact that we did have plentiful backfield cover, no one was able to get back to them. And that hasn't been happening all tournament. We'll come back to the deal a little bit later on, but I agree. I think just mentally, this team needs to win a trophy. that puts unfortunately even more pressure on the URC this year, and that doesn't make the pressure situation easier. But this team needs to remember what it's like to win. They need to get silverware back under their belts, and I do firmly believe that had we won any of the last few trophies, we'd have won yesterday's game. I think this is so much of this is mental at this stage.